The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. On the first day of the week, 2 of the disciples were going to a village called Emmaus, about 11 kilometers from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" They replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and our leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the third day since these things took place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and they did not find his body there. They came back and they told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. And some of those who were with us when we went to the tomb found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him." So then he said to them, "Oh, you, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets had declared. Was it not necessary that the Christ should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the Scriptures. As they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he were going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it is almost evening and the day is nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. And when he was at the table with them, he took bread, he blessed it, he broke it, and he gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while we were talking with him on the road, while he was opening the Scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and they returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. These were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road and how he had made known to them in the breaking of bread. The Gospel of the Lord. The words of the gospel, may our sins be wiped away.
There are a number of beautiful accounts, post-resurrection accounts, found in each one of our 4 canonical Gospels. And you can debate which is the most beautiful of them. I would say for me it comes down to either this account, which we've just heard, or perhaps as a close second, chapter 21 of John's Gospel. This account, like what we heard last week, begins with an indication that it was the first Easter Sunday night, the first day of the week. And we hear of these 2 disciples going to a village, Emmaus, about 11 kilometers from Jerusalem. That's a fair distance to walk. They're talking with each other about everything that's been going on over the past few days. All of a sudden, Jesus himself comes near and goes with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And that's something we find in a lot of these different post-resurrection accounts. People do not immediately recognize Jesus until he makes himself known to them. Of course, they weren't expecting a dead, crucified man to be walking on the road to Emmaus. He is going to kind of bring them out. So what are you talking about as you're walking along? And they're sad. Then we hear the name of one of them, Cleopas. We never hear the other's name. So we don't know, was it a man, was it a woman? We have no way of knowing. Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who doesn't know what's been going on here these past few days? And so Jesus plays dumb. What things? The things about Jesus of Nazareth, a prophet mighty in deed and word before God and all the people. So already they're recognizing him as a prophet. How he was handed over to be condemned to death and crucified. But we had hoped that he would be the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, now they start to tell what they knew about the events of that Easter Sunday morning. Some women of our group have astounded us. They went to the tomb early in the morning to make sure Jesus was properly anointed in death. And they came back talking about a vision of angels who said he was alive. They went to the tomb and found it empty, but they did not see him. And then Jesus starts to teach them from the scriptures about himself. How foolish you are. How slow of heart to believe what the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Christ should suffer these things and then enter into his glory? And starting with Moses and the prophets. That's basically a title for the Old Testament that's frequently used in the New Testament. He interpreted to them all the things about himself in the scriptures. They come to the village of Emmaus. He makes as if he's going to continue on his way. But they're intrigued now by this stranger who knows so much. Stay with us. It's almost evening. The day is almost over. So he goes in to stay with them. And here's the fascinating thing. They had invited him to be their guests, and now he seems to take over. While he was at table with them, he took bread, blessed, and broke it. And he gave it to them. It sounds like the words that are spoken at the consecration of every Mass. And their eyes were opened. And finally, they recognized him. And then he vanished from their sight. His work with them was done. Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking with us on the road and opening the scriptures to us? And even though it was dark, and even though they had walked 11 kilometers, they got up and returned to Jerusalem, where they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. And they heard from them, the Lord has risen, and he has appeared to Simon. And then they shared their news of how the Lord had made himself known to them through the breaking open of the scriptures and through the breaking of the bread. The exact same way that the Lord continues to make himself known to us, through the breaking open of the scriptures and through the breaking of the bread.